She asked me not to let it look lonely. The words were so small that, for a moment, William Harrington thought the wind had said them. He stood halfway up the gravel path of Magnolia Rest Cemetery, one hand still resting on the polished door of his black Cadillac, his gray overcoat pulled tight against the cold Charleston morning. Dawn had barely broken over the old oaks, and the Spanish moss hanging from their branches moved slowly in the pale light like tired curtains. The cemetery was empty, or it should have been. Will had chosen this hour because no one came this early. No reporters, no board members, no charity directors with careful smiles. No one to watch the great William Harrington, billionaire developer, owner of half the skyline downtown, walk toward the one piece of land he would have traded everything to erase from his life. Eleanor Harrington's grave sat beneath a white marble angel near the east fence, where the morning sun reached first. Will had not visited in 4 months. He had sent flowers, expensive ones, arranged by someone else. He had paid the groundskeepers, renewed the private maintenance contract, signed checks without reading the totals. Money had done what money always did for him. It stood in his place. But that morning, as he stepped from the path onto the damp grass, he saw a little girl kneeling in front of Eleanor's headstone. She could not have been more than 8 years old. Her skin was deep brown, her hair braided into neat rows tied with 2 faded yellow beads, and her coat was too thin for the weather, though she had buttoned it all the way to her chin as if dignity could keep a person warm. Beside her sat a small canvas backpack, worn at the corners, and in her hand was a pale blue handkerchief. She was wiping the lower edge of the stone with careful, gentle strokes, as if the marble could feel pain. Will stopped. His first feeling was not anger. It was confusion, sharp and cold. The second was something closer to offense. This was Eleanor's place. His wife's name. His grief. His failure. No stranger had a right to kneel there like she belonged. "What are you doing?" he asked. His voice came out harder than he intended, cutting through the quiet like a snapped branch. The little girl turned her head. She did not jump. She did not run. Her eyes, wide and steady, studied him for a second before she looked back at the headstone and finished wiping a line of mud from the carved letters. "Cleaning it, sir," she said. Will took 3 slow steps closer, his shoes sinking slightly into the wet grass. "Do you know whose grave that is?" The girl folded the handkerchief once, then again, keeping her fingers careful around the dirty edge. "Yes, sir." "Then why are you here?" The question hung between them. Somewhere beyond the iron fence, a delivery truck rumbled down the road, its sound fading into the hush of the cemetery. The girl glanced at the white lilies lying across the stone. They were old, their edges browned from cold and rain. She touched one petal, not to take it, only to straighten it. "She asked me not to let it look lonely," she said. Will's breath caught before he could stop it. Not because the sentence made sense, but because it did not. Eleanor had been gone for 11 months. The child in front of him was too young, too calm, too certain. He looked around, expecting an adult to appear from behind a tree, some parent, some caretaker, someone who could explain why a little girl was kneeling at his wife's grave before sunrise. No one came. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya Brooks." "Maya," he repeated, as if the name might unlock something. It did not. "Who brought you here?" "Nobody." His eyes narrowed. "You walked." She nodded toward the road beyond the cemetery gates. "From the bus stop. It's not far if you cut by the flower shop." The bus stop was nearly a mile away. Will looked at her shoes. They were clean but old, with 1 pink lace and 1 white one. There was a faint line of mud around the soles. She noticed his glance and tucked her feet closer beneath her coat, not ashamed, exactly, but private. That small motion unsettled him more than tears would have. "Why would my wife ask you anything?" Will said. Maya looked up then, fully. Her face was serious, almost solemn, but there was no performance in it, no pleading. "Because she said some people remember with flowers, and some people remember by showing up." The cemetery seemed to grow still around him. Will's jaw tightened. Eleanor used to say things like that, soft sentences that sounded simple until they found the one place inside him he kept locked. He had hated that about her sometimes, the way she could turn kindness into a mirror. "Did someone tell you to say that?" he asked. Maya blinked. "No, sir." "Are you here for money?" The question left his mouth before he could soften it. The girl's shoulders pulled back, just a little. Not enough to look offended. Enough to look human. "No, sir." she said quietly. I don't take money from graves. Will looked away first. The answer landed cleanly, without accusation, and somehow that made it worse. He shoved one hand into his coat pocket and stared at the stone. Eleanor Marie Harrington. Beloved wife. Gentle heart. The words had cost him $12,000, chosen from a list in a quiet office by a man who had never met her. Gentle heart. It looked almost insulting now, carved in stone by people who had no idea how true it was. You shouldn't be here alone, he said, though the sharpness had drained from his voice. Maya returned to the stone and brushed a damp leaf away from the base. I come early, so I don't bother anyone. You're bothering me. He regretted it immediately. Maya's hand paused. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. She looked at the grave, then at the lilies, then slowly rose to her feet. She was smaller standing than she had seemed kneeling. I'm sorry, she said. I'll go. She bent to pick up her backpack, but before she turned, she reached into the side pocket and pulled out a single fresh daisy wrapped in a paper napkin. It was not from a florist. The stem was uneven, probably cut with kitchen scissors. She placed it beneath Eleanor's name with both hands. She liked simple flowers too, Maya whispered. Will felt something move in his chest, something old and unwelcome. How would you know that? Maya did not answer right away. She slipped the blue handkerchief into her pocket and lifted her backpack strap over one shoulder. Then she looked toward the cemetery gate, where the first gold line of sunlight was beginning to touch the iron bars. Because when my mama was sad, Mrs. Eleanor brought her daisies from the grocery store, she said. She said roses were for being noticed, but daisies were for being kind. Will stood perfectly still. His fingers went cold inside his pocket. Eleanor had said that to him once in their kitchen, years ago, after he sent 300 roses to apologize for missing their anniversary dinner. Roses are for being noticed, Will. Daisies are for being kind. He had laughed then, kissed her forehead, and ordered another meeting for the next morning. Now the words had returned through the voice of a child he had never seen before. Maya stepped around him carefully, giving him space as though grief were a sleeping animal she did not want to wake. She had almost reached the gravel path when Will saw the corner of the handkerchief hanging from her pocket. Pale blue cotton. Silver thread along the edge. His body reacted before his mind did. Wait, he said. Maya stopped. Will took one step toward her, slower this time. Where did you get that handkerchief? Maya's fingers closed around the pocket. Not fearfully. Protectively. Mrs. Eleanor gave it to my mama. Will's voice dropped. Let me see it. Maya hesitated, then pulled it free and held it out flat in her small hands. The morning light touched the corner, and Will saw the initials stitched there in silver thread. H. His wife's initials. Eleanor's handkerchief. The one she carried in her purse every spring because she said tissues were too impatient. Will stared at it, and the world seemed to narrow until there was only blue cloth, silver thread, and a little girl watching him with eyes far too honest for the hour. She told my mama, Maya said softly, if she ever couldn't come back, I should keep it safe and keep the stone clean. Will tried to speak, but no sound came. The billionaire who could silence a room with one glance, who could move markets with a phone call, who had built towers out of steel and glass and pride, stood in the wet grass before his wife's grave, unable to ask the one question that mattered. Why had Eleanor trusted this child with a promise he had never even known existed? Maya looked at him gently, as if she understood that grown men sometimes needed time to hear the truth. Then she placed the handkerchief back in her pocket and said, she said you weren't a bad man, sir. She said you were just lonely in a room full of money. And that was when William Harrington forgot how to breathe. William did not answer right away. The words stayed between them, fragile and impossible, while the pale morning widened across Magnolia Rest Cemetery. A thin mist hovered above the grass, and somewhere in the distance a sprinkler clicked on with a soft, steady rhythm, though the ground was already wet from the night before. Maya stood on the gravel path with her backpack strapped slipping down one shoulder, the blue handkerchief tucked safely in her pocket, her face calm in the way children become calm when they have learned not to expect much from adults. William looked at her, then at Eleanor's grave, then back at the small daisy resting beneath his wife's carved name. He wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to tell himself that grief could make coincidences feel like messages, that this little girl had somehow heard private phrases from someone else, that none of this meant what his heart already knew it meant. But Eleanor's words had always traveled like that, quietly, finding the person who needed them most after everyone else had stopped listening. "Who is your mother?" he asked at last. Maya shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Tasha Brooks." The name did not strike him at first. William Harrington knew senators, architects, investors, judges, men who owned shipping ports, and women who chaired museums. He knew names printed on brass plaques and charity invitations. But Tasha Brooks sat somewhere outside the polished map of his memory, which made him feel ashamed before he understood why. "Did she work for Eleanor?" he asked. "Not for her," Maya said. "Near her." William frowned. Maya seemed to choose her words carefully, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to be fair. Mama cleaned offices at the King Street building, the one with the glass lobby and the fountain. "That looks like a silver bowl." William knew the building instantly. Harrington Towers South. 43 floors. Marble imported from Italy. A lobby fountain Eleanor had always called unnecessary, though she admitted children liked dropping pennies into it. "My company owns that building," he said. "I know," Maya replied. There was no accusation in her voice. That made it harder to hear. Before William could ask another question, tires crackled over gravel behind them. A dark green maintenance cart rolled along the cemetery lane and stopped near the row of magnolias. Grant Whitaker stepped out wearing a tan jacket with the cemetery crest stitched over the chest. He was a narrow man in his late 50s, with silver hair combed too carefully and a smile that appeared only when useful. William recognized him from the funeral and from several formal emails about grave maintenance, invoices, flower deliveries, weather damage, things William had signed without feeling. Grant's eyes moved from William to Maya, and his expression tightened. "Mr. Harrington," he said, walking quickly toward them. "I did not realize you were visiting this morning." William did not look away from Maya. Apparently neither did anyone else. Grant gave a polite laugh that did not belong in the cemetery. "Well, we try to keep everything private for the family, of course." Then his gaze dropped to Maya. "Young lady, we have spoken about this before. You cannot keep coming here without permission." Maya lowered her eyes, but she did not step back. "I was not hurting anything, Mr. Whitaker. That is not the point." Grant's voice stayed smooth, but something firm hid beneath it. "This is private property, and these families deserve respect." William turned then, slowly. "She was cleaning my wife's grave." Grant's smile flickered. "Yes, and I am sure she meant well. Children often do. But we cannot allow strangers to wander through the grounds, especially near private memorials. It creates concerns." "What kind of concerns?" William asked. Grant glanced at Maya again. "Misunderstandings. Missing flowers. Disturbed arrangements. Families become upset." Maya's cheeks changed, not with guilt, but with the quiet sting of being placed in a story she had not written. William saw it, and something in him sharpened. 5 minutes earlier, he might have let Grant remove her. 5 minutes earlier, he might have believed the adult with the official jacket over the child with mismatched shoelaces. But now the blue handkerchief was in Maya's pocket, and Eleanor's voice was still echoing in the damp air. "Has anything gone missing from my wife's grave?" William asked. Grant blinked. "Not specifically, no." "Has she damaged anything?" "No, but that is not really the issue." "Then what is the issue?" Grant's mouth opened, then closed. The cemetery grew silent enough that William could hear the faint scrape of Maya's sneaker against the gravel. Grant folded his hands in front of him. "Mr. Harrington, with all respect, people sometimes attach themselves to wealthy families in uncomfortable ways. They learn names, details, personal things. It is unfortunate, but it happens." Maya looked up sharply, not angry, wounded. William noticed the blue beads at the end of her braids tremble slightly in the wind. He heard his own voice before he had fully decided to speak. "Did you teach her that my wife preferred daisies to roses?" Grant's face became still. "I beg your pardon. Did you tell her that I bought lilies when I was sorry?" Grant's eyes moved too fast, just once, toward the grave. "I would not know anything about that." "Neither would anyone else," William said. Maya stood very quietly between them, small enough to be overlooked and truthful enough to make every polished sentence around her seem cheap. Grant cleared his throat. "Perhaps Miss Brooks heard things from her mother. Staff talk, you know. Buildings have ears." "My mama does not gossip," Maya said. Her voice was soft, but it cut cleanly. "Mrs. Eleanor talked to her because she was kind." The sentence landed in William's chest. Because she was kind. Not because she was rich. Not because she wanted applause. Kind. Grant's expression hardened for half a second before the professional smile returned. Of course, no one is questioning the late Mrs. Harrington's generosity. You just questioned the child. Carrying proof of it, Williams said. Grant fell silent. The first sunlight finally reached Eleanor's stone, turning the carved letters pale gold. William stepped closer to Maya, not touching her, simply standing near enough that Grant would understand the direction of his protection. Maya noticed. Her shoulders eased, barely. Maya, William said, keeping his voice low. How often do you come here? Every Sunday if the bus is on time. For how long? She looked at the grave. Since spring. William felt the word pass through him. Spring. He had spent spring avoiding this place, drowning himself in meetings, breaking ground on another luxury hotel, pretending grief was something a calendar would carry away if he ignored it long enough. While he stayed away, an 8-year-old girl had taken the bus before sunrise to wipe rain and dust from Eleanor's name. Why did you not tell anyone? He asked. Maya's fingers tightened around her backpack strap. I did not think anyone would believe me. Grant exhaled as if that settled everything. You see, Mr. Harrington, this is exactly the concern. A child making claims about a deceased woman can create emotional confusion for everyone involved. William turned to him fully. Do not speak about my wife as if she is a legal inconvenience. The words came out quiet, but Grant's face paled. Maya looked from one man to the other, and for the first time there was something like hope in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. William softened his voice. Maya, did Eleanor give your mother anything else? The girl hesitated. Letters. Grant's head lifted. Letters. William saw the reaction and felt it like a door opening in a dark hallway. Maya nodded. Only a few. Mama keeps them in a cookie tin because the apartment gets damp. Mrs. Eleanor wrote down things she wanted Mama to remember. William swallowed. What things? Maya looked at Eleanor's grave again, and when she spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. That people are not problems to solve. They are people to stand beside. William closed his eyes for 1 second. He could see Eleanor saying it at their breakfast table while he skimmed financial reports, nodding. Without listening. He had mistaken her softness for innocence. Maybe it had been wisdom all along. When he opened his eyes, Grant was watching him carefully, calculating. Mr. Harrington, I would advise caution before following this any further. Grief can make people vulnerable. William looked at him, and something old in his face returned, not coldness this time, but command. Then it is a good thing I am finished being vulnerable to the wrong people. Grant said nothing. Maya looked down at her shoes, but William saw the smallest breath leave her, like a child setting down a weight she had carried too long. He turned back to Eleanor's grave and stared at the daisy beneath her name. It was simple, uneven, and brighter than all the expensive flowers he had ever sent. Maya, he said gently, would you be willing to show me those letters? She looked up at him for a long moment. You will not take them from my mama? No, you will not make her feel small. The question was so direct that William felt heat rise behind his eyes. He had made many people feel small without noticing. Assistants, contractors, waiters, Eleanor, perhaps most of all, in the quiet ways that mattered. No, he said, and this time the word was not businesslike. It was a promise. Maya studied him, measuring not his suit or his car or his name, but his voice. Then she nodded once. Okay, Mr. Harrington. Behind them, Grant shifted on the gravel. William did not turn around. For the first time in 11 months, he felt that visiting Eleanor's grave was not an ending. It was the beginning of a truth she had left behind, hidden not in marble or money, but in the pocket of a little girl who had kept showing up when he had not. The walk from Eleanor's grave to the cemetery gate felt longer than 1 mile, though the black Cadillac waited only a few yards beyond the iron fence. William Harrington moved slowly, not because of age, but because the morning had rearranged something inside him, and every step seemed to ask a question he was not ready to answer. Maya walked beside him on the gravel path with both hands wrapped around the straps of her backpack. She did not look impressed by the car, or the private cemetery road, or the way Grant Whitaker stood behind them pretending not to watch while watching every move they made. She looked only at the ground ahead, careful not to step in the soft mud near the flower beds. When they reached the gate, William opened the rear door for her out of instinct, the way drivers and assistants had always opened doors for him. Maya stopped. "I can take the bus," she said. William looked down at her. "I know you can. Then why are you opening that?" "Because I said I would not make your mother feel small." "That starts with not making you feel small either." Maya considered that. The morning wind moved the yellow beads at the ends of her braids, making the faintest clicking sound. "It is a very clean car," she said. "It has survived worse than wet shoes." She looked at her sneakers, then at the leather seats. "I can wipe my feet." "Maya," William said softly, "please get in." She climbed inside carefully, sitting at the far edge of the seat as if the car were a museum bench. William closed the door with a gentle push and walked around to the driver's side. He had a chauffeur 6 days a week, sometimes 7, but that morning he wanted no witness, no polished silence from the front seat, no employee hearing the tremor that still sat in his breathing. As he started the engine, the dashboard glowed blue. Maya's eyes moved over the smooth wood trim and quiet screens, but she did not touch anything. "Where to?" William asked. "East Bay Street first," she said. "Then the number 12 bus line. But if you turn before the grocery store, it is faster." He glanced at her in the mirror. "You know the city well. You have to know places when you do not always have rides." Again, no complaint. Just fact. The Cadillac rolled away from Magnolia Rest, past the stone walls and low iron gates, into the waking edge of Charleston. The city was beginning to stretch itself open. Delivery vans idled near bakeries. A man in a baseball cap hosed down the sidewalk outside a coffee shop. The smell of wet pavement and roasted beans drifted through the vents when William slowed at a red light. He had lived in this city his whole life and owned pieces of it large enough to appear in business magazines. Yet from the back seat, Maya described a different Charleston entirely, one measured by bus stops, laundromats, church pantries, safe corners in the rain, in which grocery clerk would let a child count coins slowly without sighing. "Did Eleanor know where you lived?" William asked. Maya nodded. "She visited twice. Mama told her not to because people in our building talk, but Mrs. Eleanor said people talk when they are empty and help when they are full." William tightened his hands around the steering wheel. Another Eleanor sentence. Another small lamp lit in a room he had never entered. "And I never knew," he said, mostly to himself. Maya heard anyway. "Maybe she tried to tell you." The words were not cruel. That made them more difficult. William watched the light change and drove on. He thought of all the evenings Eleanor had waited in the kitchen with 2 cups of tea, asking if he had 10 minutes. He thought of his phone glowing in his hand. He thought of the phrase he used like a shield, "Not tonight, Ellie." By the time they turned onto a narrower street lined with older brick buildings and sagging balconies, the city looked less polished. Paint peeled from window frames. A corner store sign blinked, even though it was morning. Maya leaned forward slightly. "Here," she said. "The blue building." William parked along the curb in front of a 3-story apartment building with a cracked front step and 2 bicycles chained to the railing. A laundromat sat next door, its windows fogged from dryers turning inside. The sign above it read Palmetto Wash and Fold, though the letter O had gone dark. Maya unbuckled her seat belt and paused with her hand on the door. Mama gets nervous around people in suits. William looked down at himself, at the dark coat, the tailored pants, the watch Eleanor had given him for his 50th birthday. "I can take off the coat." Maya almost smiled. "You would still look like a bank." For the first time that morning, something like warmth moved through his grief. "Fair enough." They climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent, old wood, and someone frying onions behind a closed door. Maya knocked twice, then once more softly. "Mama, it is me." A lock turned. Tasha Brooks opened the door with a dish towel in one hand. She was younger than William expected, early 30s perhaps, with tired eyes that sharpened the moment she saw him. Her hair was pulled back in a scarf, and she wore a faded sweatshirt from a local community college. "Maya," she said carefully, pulling her daughter closer without making a scene. "Who is this?" Maya looked up at her. "This is Mr. Harrington." The name changed the air. Tasha's face went still. Not frightened exactly. Guarded. She looked past William toward the hall, as if searching for the reason a man like him would stand at her door on a Sunday morning. William felt suddenly too large for the narrow hallway, too polished, too late. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, lowering his voice, "I apologize for arriving without notice. I met Maya at the cemetery." Tasha closed her eyes for half a second. Maya, I cleaned it like I promised, Maya said quickly. I did not bother anybody. He saw the handkerchief. Tasha's hand tightened around the towel. William lifted both palms slightly, not entering, not pushing. I am not here to take anything from you. Tasha studied him. People usually say that before they take something. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. William nodded once, accepting the sentence because it had earned its place. Then I will only ask. Maya said Eleanor wrote you letters. At the sound of Eleanor's name, Tasha's guarded expression cracked just enough for sorrow to show through. She looked toward the small apartment behind her. Morning light fell through thin curtains onto a kitchen table covered with school papers, a chipped mug, and a round blue cookie tin with white snowflakes painted on the lid. William saw it before she spoke. The letters were there. Tasha followed his gaze and stepped partly in front of the table. Those are private. I understand. No, Tasha said, quiet but firm. You probably do not. Your wife did not write those letters for lawyers or newspapers or Harrington people to polish into some kind of legacy story. She wrote them because she saw us. William absorbed the words. Behind Tasha, Maya stood very still, looking from her mother to him as though the future depended on whether adults could speak the truth without breaking it. William removed his coat slowly and folded it over one arm, not because it made him look less like a bank, but because he needed his hands to do something humble. You are right, he said. I do not understand, but I would like to. Tasha looked at him for a long time. Then she stepped back from the doorway. 5 minutes, she said, and you sit where I can see your hands. Maya let out the smallest breath. William entered the apartment. It was clean, modest, and warm in the careful way of homes where everything had a place because there was not much to waste. A small vase on the windowsill held 3 daisies in cloudy water. On the refrigerator, a spelling test with a gold star hung beside a photograph of Maya and Tasha standing outside a church. William sat at the kitchen table. Tasha opened the cookie tin and lifted out a bundle of envelopes tied with a yellow ribbon. The top one was addressed in Eleanor's handwriting. Not the graceful public signature William knew from charity cards, but her real hand, hurried, slanted, alive. Tasha placed one letter in front of him, but kept her fingers on it. She helped us when no one was looking, she said. Not loudly. Not for a plaque. She came into that laundromat one night after the building holiday party. I was cleaning bathrooms in a uniform 2 sizes too big, and Maya was asleep on a pile of towels because the sitter canceled. I thought she would complain. Tasha's voice softened. Instead, she covered my daughter with her own scarf and asked me when I had last eaten. William stared at the envelope. His vision blurred, but he did not touch it. She never told me. She said you were busy building rooms, Tasha replied. And she was busy trying to make sure people could live in them. The sentence went through him like a bell. Maya climbed into the chair beside her mother, quiet and watchful. Tasha finally released the letter. William opened it with care. The paper trembled slightly in his hands. The first line read, Tasha, if I do not get the chance to come by this week, please tell Maya the daisies are still my favorite. William stopped reading. He looked toward the windowsill, at the 3 small flowers leaning toward the light. He had thought the daisy at the grave was a child's offering. Now he understood it was a language Eleanor had left behind, and Maya had been speaking it all along. William read the first letter without moving from Tasha Brooks's kitchen table. Outside the apartment window, Charleston had fully woken. A bus sighed at the curb below, brakes releasing with a soft hiss. Somewhere downstairs, a dryer turned unevenly in the laundromat, making a low thumping sound like a tired heartbeat. Inside the small apartment, the only sound was the thin paper shifting in William's hands as Eleanor's handwriting carried him into a life that had been happening beside his own without his permission, without his attention, and perhaps because of his neglect. Tasha, the letter began, I left the grocery card inside the blue envelope, but please do not think of it as charity. Think of it as a bridge. Everyone deserves a bridge when the road gives out. William swallowed hard. He could picture Eleanor writing those words at the small desk by their bedroom window, probably late at night, while he was downstairs answering emails under the cold glow of 3 computer screens. He had always believed she spent those quiet hours reading garden magazines or writing thank you notes for charity luncheons. He had never imagined her folding grocery cards into envelopes for a woman cleaning one of his buildings after midnight. Across from him, Tasha sat with one hand resting lightly on Maya's shoulder. She watched William carefully, not with bitterness, but with the caution of someone who had learned that powerful people could turn tender things into public relations if no one stopped them. Maya's eyes stayed on the letters. To her, they were not evidence. They were memory. She wrote like she was sitting right next to you, Maya said softly. William nodded, though his throat had tightened too much for speech. He turned to the second page. Tell Maya that the next time I see her, I expect her to read me the book about the moon all by herself. She has a brave mind. Do not let anyone call her difficult when what they mean is bright. William looked up. Maya's face changed at the sentence. It was tiny, almost invisible, but he saw it. Her chin lifted the way flowers lift toward a window. You read to her? He asked. Maya shook her head. She read to me first. Then she made me read the same page back. Eleanor did. Yes, sir. She said if I could learn how words work, people would have a harder time using them against me. William closed his eyes for 1 second. There she was again. His Eleanor. Not fragile. Not decorative. Not merely gentle. Precise. Brave. Practical in the language of kindness. He had spent years calling her soft because he had mistaken softness for weakness. Now, in a kitchen with chipped mugs and daisies and cloudy water, he began to understand that she had been stronger than everyone in the rooms he used to dominate. There are more, Tasha said. She lifted another envelope from the tin but did not hand it over. Some are just notes. Some have phone numbers for clinics, school programs, food drives. Some have money orders. She always wrote that I could refuse them if I needed to keep my pride intact. William looked at her. Did you? Tasha gave a faint, tired smile. Sometimes. Then Maya would outgrow her shoes, and pride would have to wait until Friday. Maya looked down at her mismatched laces, and William felt the sentence settle heavily between them. No accusation. No performance. Just life, plain and true. He had donated millions to foundations with names engraved on walls, but he had never noticed a child needing shoes in a building with his name above the door. Why did it stop? He asked. The kitchen seemed to dim, though the sun was still coming through the curtains. Tasha's fingers tightened around the envelope. After Mrs. Eleanor passed, a man called and said there had been a misunderstanding. William's posture changed. What man? He said he represented the Harrington family office. I do not remember his full name at first. White something. Whitaker, maybe. William felt a cold line move through him. Grant Whitaker. Tasha nodded slowly. That sounds right. He said Mrs. Eleanor had been emotionally generous, but not authorized to make ongoing commitments. He said the support would end immediately and that contacting the family would be inappropriate. Maya's voice was quiet. Mama cried after that call. Tasha turned to her daughter gently. Baby. She did, Maya said, not dramatically, only honestly. Then you put the letters in the cookie tin and said we would not beg people to remember what they promised. William set the letter down with both hands, as if it were something breakable. His mind moved quickly now, not with corporate strategy, but with a clearer and more painful arithmetic. Grant had managed the cemetery arrangements. Grant had handled the private memorial account. Grant had filtered sympathy mail, foundation inquiries, and Eleanor's unfinished projects after her death. William had signed whatever Grant placed in front of him because grief had made him impatient with details, and wealth had made him used to outsourcing discomfort. Did Eleanor ever mention a fund? William asked. Tasha looked uncertain. She mentioned something called the Porchlight account. She said it was not big enough to change the world, but it could keep a few windows warm. William stared at her. The Porchlight account. He had seen that phrase once on a bank summary after Eleanor died. Grant had called it a personal discretionary account with no active purpose. William had approved its closure without asking a single question. The memory hit him with such force that he pushed his chair back slightly, needing air. Maya watched him. Are you okay, Mr. Harrington? He looked at the child, at the concern in her face after everything his world had failed to protect. I do not think I am, he said honestly. Tasha studied him for a long moment, then reached into the cookie tin again. This time, she removed a smaller envelope, cream-colored, sealed, but opened once before. The flaps softened from being handled many times. On the front, in Eleanor's handwriting, were 3 words. For William, someday. The kitchen went completely still. William did not reach for it. He could not. She gave that to you? He whispered. Tasha nodded. 2 weeks before she passed. She came by the laundromat in a blue cardigan. She looked tired, but she smiled at Maya like nothing was wrong. She told me if there ever came a day when you asked the right question, I should give this to you. William's eyes stayed on the envelope. What was the right question? Tasha's expression softened, and for the first time since he entered the apartment, her guard lowered just enough for compassion to show. Why did it stop? William looked down. The question he had finally asked. The question he should have asked 11 months ago. The question Eleanor must have known he would avoid until the truth came dressed in a child's courage. Maya slid from her chair and stood beside the table. She did not touch the envelope. She only looked at William with steady eyes. Mama said letters are like doors, she said. You do not have to open them fast. You just have to open them when it is time. William let out a breath that trembled despite his effort to control it. He reached for the envelope, but his fingers paused above Eleanor's name. In boardrooms, his hands never shook. Signing acquisitions, firing executives, negotiating billion-dollar deals, he had been steady as stone. But now, before one letter from the wife he had loved badly and lost completely, his hand trembled like a man reaching toward a flame. He opened it carefully. The paper inside smelled faintly of lavender, or perhaps memory made him imagine it. The first line nearly ended him. Will, if this letter found you through Tasha or little Maya, then it means you finally followed kindness far enough to find the truth. He pressed his lips together. Tasha looked away to give him privacy. Maya stayed where she was, small and quiet, a witness without judgment. William continued reading. I know you think money is the safest way to love people because money never asks you to sit still, listen, or admit you were wrong. But I married the boy who once fixed a neighbor's porch step in the rain because an old woman was afraid she might trip. I know he is still in there. I have been trying to leave him breadcrumbs. Home. William's vision blurred. He remembered that porch step. He was 19. Eleanor was 17, laughing under a yellow umbrella while he hammered a crooked board into place for Mrs. Alvarez next door. He had forgotten that boy so completely it felt like hearing about a stranger. The letter continued. The porch light account is not charity. It is a promise. If I cannot keep it, please do not let Grant or anyone else bury it under paperwork. Find Tasha. Find Maya. Then keep looking. There are more people standing in the rain than you know. William lowered the letter slowly. The room swayed around him, not visibly, but inwardly, as if the architecture of his life had shifted beneath his feet. Grant had not merely ended payments. He had buried Eleanor's promise under paperwork, and William had let him. In the silence, Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the blue handkerchief. She placed it on the table beside the letter, smoothing one corner with her fingertip. Mrs. Eleanor said blue was for remembering the sky after storms, she said. William looked at the handkerchief, the letter, the daisies, the child, the mother, the small bright kitchen that held more of Eleanor than his mansion ever had. And for the first time since his wife's funeral, he did not feel haunted by her absence. He felt called by what she had left unfinished. William left Tasha Brooks's apartment with Eleanor's letter folded inside his coat pocket and the feeling that the morning had not ended, only deepened. Maya walked him to the top of the stairs, her small hand sliding along the chipped wooden rail, while Tasha remained near the doorway with the cookie tin held against her chest, as if it contained something warmer than paper. The hallway smelled of laundry soap and old rain. A neighbor's television murmured behind a closed door. William paused on the landing and looked back at them, mother and daughter framed by the narrow apartment light, and for the first time in many years, he did not know how to leave a room with authority. I will find out what happened, he said. Tasha did not soften immediately. Finding out is different from fixing. I know. Do you? Her question was not rude. It was tired, and because it was tired, it carried more weight. William nodded slowly. I am beginning to. Maya reached into her pocket and touched the edge of the blue handkerchief, making sure it was still there. Mrs. Eleanor said beginning is better than pretending. William almost smiled, but the ache in his chest stopped it halfway. She was usually right. Not usually, Maya said. Always when it mattered. Downstairs, the laundromat door chimed as someone entered, and warm air rolled into the stairwell. William stepped outside into the late morning sun. His Cadillac waited along the curb, polished and quiet, looking painfully out of place beside the cracked sidewalk and faded blue building. He sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. For nearly a minute, He simply stared through the windshield at Palmetto Wash and Fold. He saw, in his mind, Eleanor crossing that same sidewalk in a blue cardigan, carrying grocery cards and daisies, stepping into a place he had owned on paper but never truly seen. He thought about all the times she had come home smelling faintly of detergent instead of perfume, and how he had never asked why. His phone vibrated. Grant Whitaker's name lit the screen. William watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, then answered. "Mr. Harrington," Grant said, his voice smooth but slightly too quick. "I wanted to follow up about this morning. I hope the situation did not become more upsetting than necessary." William looked at the laundromat window, where rows of dryers turned in slow circles. "Which situation?" There was a pause. "The child, sir. Miss Brooks. I know grief can make certain encounters feel meaningful, but I strongly recommend distance until we understand her family's intentions. Their intentions were written in my wife's handwriting." Silence. A dryer sheet tumbled against the laundromat glass and stuck there for a second before dropping out of sight. Grant cleared his throat. "I am not sure I follow." "No," William said. "I am sure you do." The temperature inside the Cadillac seemed to fall. "There was an account Eleanor called the porch light account. You advised me to close it." Grant exhaled. Softly, almost like a man disappointed by paperwork returning from the dead. "Yes, that was a small discretionary account with no formal foundation structure. After Mrs. Harrington passed, it was best to consolidate assets. Standard procedure." "Who received the letters addressed to me?" Another pause, longer this time. "I handled a great deal of correspondence during that period. You were understandably unavailable." William closed his eyes. Unavailable. The word was clean enough to hide a cemetery full of failures. Did Eleanor leave instructions about Tasha Brooks? "There may have been informal notes," Grant said carefully. "Nothing legally binding. That was not my question. Mr. Harrington, with respect, your wife had a generous heart. Sometimes generous people make promises without considering long-term implications. My responsibility was to protect you from emotional obligations that could become complicated." William opened his eyes. His reflection stared back at him in the rearview mirror, older than he had looked at Dawn. "You mean people?" "Sir, you called them emotional obligations. Eleanor called them people." Grant's voice tightened beneath the courtesy. "I protected the family's reputation." William started the engine. "No, you protected me from my conscience." He ended the call before Grant could answer. The Cadillac pulled away from the curb, but instead of heading home, William drove straight to Harrington Tower South. By noon, the financial district shone under a hard blue sky. The tower rose 43 floors above King Street, all glass and steel, reflecting clouds it never touched. William parked in the private underground entrance and took the elevator alone. The doors opened into the executive floor, where white orchids sat on black marble tables and assistants lowered their voices the moment they saw him. His chief of staff, Rachel Myers, stood from her desk with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Harrington, your 12:30 call with the Atlanta investors is ready. Cancel it. The full group is already on the line. Then disappoint them." Rachel blinked. In 12 years, she had seen him angry, impatient, charming, ruthless, even briefly joyful after a major deal. She had never seen him like this, quiet in a way that made noise unnecessary. "Yes, sir. I need every file connected to Eleanor Harrington's personal accounts, charitable transfers, private correspondence after her death, and anything labeled porch light." Rachel's expression shifted from administrative focus to concern. "How far back?" 5 years. "That could take time." "Then start now." He walked into his office and stopped. The room was exactly as it had been the night before, which suddenly felt like an accusation. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs, a desk wide enough to separate him from anyone who sat across it. On the far shelf was a framed photograph of Eleanor at a garden fundraiser, wearing a cream dress and laughing at something outside the frame. He had chosen that photo because she looked beautiful. Now he wondered who had made her laugh that day, whether it had been one of the people she helped when he was too busy being important. Rachel entered 20 minutes later with a slim folder and a cautious face. "This is what we found quickly." William opened it. The first page was a bank summary. The porch light account had held far more than Grant had implied. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to pay rent, medical bills, school supplies, groceries, bus passes, winter coats. Dozens of outgoing transfers had stopped 2 weeks after Eleanor's funeral. Each termination note bore Grant Whitaker's initials. William turned pages faster. Names appeared. Tasha Brooks, Angela Rivera, Reverend Samuel Price Community Pantry, Lowcountry Children's Reading Room, a heating repair for a widow in North Charleston, tuition assistance for 3 children at St. Mark's Academy. All closed, all marked inactive, all buried under language that made abandonment sound efficient. Rachel stood silently across from him. "Sir," she said at last, "there is more." She placed a second page on the desk. It was a scanned letter from Eleanor to Grant, copied into the estate archive. William recognized her handwriting before he read the words. "Grant, if anything happens to me, please make certain Will receives the blue folder. From my desk. He will resist at first. Give it to him anyway. He needs to know what I could not make him hear." William looked up slowly. "Blue folder." Rachel shook her head. "It is not in the estate inventory." The office became very quiet. Far below, traffic moved through Charleston like silver threads, but William heard only Maya's voice from the cemetery. "She asked me not to let it look lonely." He reached into his coat pocket and touched Eleanor's letter. Something that had been grief that morning was becoming purpose. "Find Grant," he said. Rachel held the tablet closer to her chest. "He is on his way up. Security just checked him in." William looked toward the closed office doors. For years, people had come into this room afraid of what he might take from them. For the first time, William waited there not to take, but to demand back what kindness had been denied. Grant Whitaker entered William Harrington's office with the careful confidence of a man who had spent years learning which rooms feared him and which rooms needed him. He wore the same tan cemetery jacket from the morning, though now it looked strangely out of place against the black marble, glass walls, and quiet power of the executive floor. Rachel Myers closed the door behind him and remained standing near the side table, tablet in hand, her expression professional but alert. William did not invite Grant to sit. He stood behind his desk with Eleanor's letter laid open beside the bank summaries, the scanned note, and a list of names that had once been warm with help before being frozen by initials and procedure. Grant glanced at the papers, then at William's face, and his practiced smile appeared. "I came as soon as I could," he said. "I sensed from your call that this had become urgent." "It became urgent the day my wife trusted you with a promise," William said. "I am only late to it." Grant's smile thinned. "Mr. Harrington, I understand this is emotional. Discovering private acts of generosity after a loss can be overwhelming. Do not narrate my grief to me." The sentence was quiet, but it stopped Grant where he stood. William picked up the scanned letter from Eleanor. "She asked you to. Give me a blue folder." Grant's eyes moved to the paper and stayed there 1 second too long. There were many materials after Mrs. Harrington's passing. Some personal, some financial, some unsuitable to burden you with during mourning. "Unsuitable," William repeated. "That is an interesting word for my wife's final instructions. With respect, sir, Mrs. Harrington often led with her heart. Admirable, of course, but not always practical. She created dependencies without structures. People can misunderstand kindness as entitlement." Rachel's fingers tightened slightly around the tablet. William noticed, but his eyes remained on Grant. "You are talking about Tasha Brooks. I am talking about several cases. You are talking about a mother who cleaned one of my buildings at midnight and a child my wife taught to read." Grant lifted both hands in a calm, managerial gesture. "And I am saying those situations require boundaries. Your family name attracts requests. If I had allowed every informal promise to continue, there would have been no end to it." William stepped around the desk, slowly. Outside the windows, Charleston glittered in noon light, a city built from history, money, and things people preferred not to say out loud. Eleanor did not ask for no end. She asked for me to receive a folder. Grant drew in a breath. "I do not recall a blue folder." William looked at Rachel. "Play it." Rachel tapped her tablet. A soft beep sounded. Then Eleanor's voice filled the office. Not from memory, not from a dream. Real, thin, recorded on an old phone message archived in the estate system. "Grant, it is Eleanor. I left the blue folder in the lower drawer of my writing desk. Please make sure Will gets it if I cannot explain everything myself. He will be angry. Let him be angry. But do not let him stay blind." The recording ended. The office held perfectly still. Grant's face lost its color in slow degrees, like ink fading in water. William did not move. The sound of Eleanor's voice had cut him open, but he refused to look away from the man who had buried it. You did recall, William said. Grant's mouth tightened. I was protecting you. From what? From being manipulated. By a dead woman? By people who would use her memory. William's voice dropped. You mean a little girl cleaning her grave with a handkerchief? Grant looked away first. That was when William knew the truth was larger than negligence. It had shape, choice, intention. Where is the folder? Grant said nothing. Rachel's tablet chimed softly. She looked down, then up. Mr. Harrington, facilities found a storage transfer request from last year. Several boxes from Mrs. Harrington's writing room were moved to the private archive under Mr. Whitaker's authorization. William turned to Grant. You moved her things? After the funeral, the house staff needed direction. You were unavailable. There was that word again. William felt it try to enter him like an excuse, but this time he refused it. I was grieving. You used that. Grant's face hardened now that courtesy had failed. I maintained order. Your wife's little projects were sentimental, undocumented, and financially irresponsible. William stared at him. They were $200 grocery cards. They were access points, Grant said sharply. First groceries, then rent, then schooling, then medical bills, then public expectations. People talk. They would have lined up at your gates. William thought of Maya at the cemetery gate, not asking for anything. He thought of her placing a daisy beneath Eleanor's name with both hands. No, he said. One child took a bus before sunrise so my wife would not look forgotten. She had every reason to ask for more, and she asked for nothing. The words landed, and for the first time Grant had no polished answer ready. William returned to the desk and picked up the list of terminated transfers. Every account closed under your initials will be reviewed. Every person Eleanor supported will be contacted. Every dollar you redirected or withheld will be traced. Grant straightened. You should be careful. Some of those records may embarrass the family. Your wife's private involvement with staff, tenants, low-income families. The press may misinterpret it. William almost laughed, but there was no humor in him. Let them. For once, the truth can embarrass the right people. Grant's jaw worked. You are making a mistake. No, William said. I made the mistake when I let someone else decide what parts of my wife mattered. He looked at Rachel. Call legal. Freeze Grant's access to all Harrington accounts, archives, cemetery contracts, and estate files. Effective immediately. Rachel nodded. Already prepared. Grant turned toward her, startled. You cannot do that without board review. I own the company, William said. And I own my name again. The sentence changed the air. For years, Harrington had been a brand, a tower, a signature, a door that opened for money and closed against discomfort. Now it sounded like a man reclaiming responsibility. Grant's shoulders lowered slightly, not in surrender, but in calculation. The folder is not in the archive, he said. William stilled. Where is it? Grant looked toward the windows, then back at him. I sent it to off-site storage with other personal effects. North Charleston, a climate-controlled unit. I did not destroy it. Rachel typed quickly. Name of the facility? Grant hesitated. William took one step closer. You have spent 11 months deciding what I was allowed to know. That ends now. Grant gave the name and unit number in a flat voice. Rachel repeated it into her phone, already moving. William returned Eleanor's letter to his coat pocket with careful hands. He looked at the photograph on the shelf, at his wife laughing in a cream dress, and for a moment her recorded voice seemed to linger in the office like sunlight after a door closes. Do not let him stay blind. He had been blind in marble rooms, blind in board meetings, blind beside the woman who kept trying to teach him how to see. Now a child with a blue handkerchief had opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was not Grant's betrayal. It was his own absence. Have security escort Mr. Whitaker out, William said. Grant's face tightened. After all my years of service? William looked at him with a sadness deeper than anger. Service is not the same as control. The door opened. 2 security officers waited outside, calm and formal. Grant adjusted his jacket, trying to gather dignity from a room that had stopped giving it to him. Before leaving, he looked back once. You think that girl is innocent because she is quiet. Quiet people hide things too. William's voice was steady. So do well-dressed men. Grant left. The door closed. Only then did William sit down, and only then did his hands begin to shake. Rachel remained by the table, silent. After a moment, she said, Should I send someone to the storage unit? William looked at Eleanor's photograph, then at the daisy Maya had placed in his mind so clearly he could almost see it on the desk. No, he said. I am going myself. By late afternoon, the city light had turned honey gold. William drove north with Rachel beside him and Eleanor's letter in his pocket, following the route to a storage facility near an industrial stretch of road where warehouses sat behind chain-link fences and sea wind carried the smell of salt and metal. The unit door rolled up with a rough rattle. Inside were boxes labeled in black marker. Holiday linens, garden books, writing desk, personal papers. At the back, resting beneath a folded quilt, was a blue folder tied with white ribbon. William lifted it as if lifting something alive. On the front, Eleanor had written his name. Not William. Not Mr. Harrington. Just Will. He stood in the fading light of the storage unit, holding the map his wife had left him, knowing every page inside would lead back to people he had failed to notice, and perhaps, if he had the courage to follow it, back to the man Eleanor believed he could still become. William did not open the blue folder inside the storage unit. He stood there for a long moment with Eleanor's name for him written across the cover, Will, and understood that some doors deserved more than fluorescent light and concrete floors. Rachel waited near the entrance without speaking, her phone lowered, her usual efficiency softened by the quiet weight of what they had found. Outside, the late afternoon sun stretched across the industrial road, turning the chain-link fence into lines of gold. William carried the folder to the Cadillac himself. He placed it on the passenger seat as carefully as if Eleanor were sitting there, then drove not toward his mansion on the Battery, not toward the office, not toward any place where people would bring him coffee and call him sir. He drove back to East Bay Street. The city moved around him in slow Sunday traffic. Families crossed at painted intersections. College students laughed outside a sandwich shop. A man in a work shirt balanced 2 paper bags of groceries against his hip. William saw them all too sharply now, as if Eleanor's letter had cleaned a window he had not known was dirty. When he reached the blue apartment building beside Palmetto Wash and Fold, the sky had turned soft pink at the edges. Maya was sitting on the front step with a library book open on her knees, her yellow beads glowing faintly in the evening light. She looked up when the Cadillac stopped, not surprised, almost as if some part of her had known the story would return to the same step. Did you find it? She asked. William stepped out with the blue folder in his hand. Yes. Maya closed the book carefully, marking her page with a grocery receipt. Was it where she said? Not where she wanted it to be, William said, but where someone tried to leave it forgotten. Maya nodded, accepting the answer with a seriousness that made her seem older than 8. Forgotten things get heavy. William looked at her. Who told you that? Nobody. I just know. Tasha opened the door before Maya could knock, and this time her face did not close completely when she saw William. It remained cautious, but there was room inside that caution for the possibility of truth. She looked at the folder, then at his expression. You found something. Eleanor left a list, William said, and more than a list. Tasha stepped aside. The kitchen looked the same as it had that morning, but William entered it differently. The daisies still leaned toward the window. The cookie tin sat on the counter. A pot simmered on the stove, filling the apartment with the smell of chicken broth, onions, and black pepper. Maya climbed into her chair. Tasha remained standing. William placed the blue folder on the table and untied the white ribbon. Inside were pages in Eleanor's handwriting, bank statements, photographs, receipts, envelopes, and a folded sheet labeled Porchlight Families. William read the first few names aloud. Tasha Brooks, Maya Brooks, Angela Rivera, Reverend Samuel Price, Denise Caldwell, Carla and Jonah Reed. Low Country Children's Reading Room. Tasha's face changed at one of the names. Angela Rivera lived 2 doors down from us before she moved. Eleanor paid for her son's asthma treatments, William said quietly. Grant ended it after the funeral. Tasha lowered herself into the chair across from him. Angela thought the clinic dropped the program. William turned another page. It was not the clinic. Maya's eyes moved over the papers without touching them. Mrs. Eleanor helped all those people. Yes, William said, and she wanted me to keep helping them if she could not. The words seemed simple, but saying them aloud made his chest tighten. He had inherited buildings, accounts, stock, land, and influence. Yet the only inheritance that suddenly mattered was this thin folder of unfinished kindness. Tasha reached for one of the photographs. It showed Eleanor standing outside the laundromat in her blue cardigan, smiling beside a small group of children holding books. Maya was younger in the picture, maybe 6, with her hair in 2 puffballs and a gap-toothed grin. William had never seen the photograph before. He had never seen Eleanor look exactly like that either. Not posed, not polished, useful, happy. That was the reading night, Maya said softly. Mrs. Eleanor brought cookies shaped like stars. She burned the first batch. William stared at the photo. She could not bake. Maya smiled. She said rich ovens lie. Tasha laughed once before covering her mouth, surprised by the sound. William felt the laugh move through the room like a candle being lit. He looked down at the folder again and found an envelope marked read last. His name was not on it. Instead, Eleanor had written, "When he has seen enough to stop defending himself." William rested his hand over the envelope, but did not open it yet. "There is something I need to ask both of you," he said. Tasha's smile faded, but she did not retreat. "What? Why did Maya keep going to the grave after everything stopped? After Grant's call? After the support ended? After no one from my family came?" Tasha looked at Maya, and this time she let her daughter answer. Maya folded her hands on the table. Her fingers were small, but steady, because Mrs. Eleanor was still Mrs. Eleanor. William waited. Maya looked toward the daisies on the windowsill. When somebody is kind to you, you do not only remember them when they can help. You remember them because they were kind. Tasha closed her eyes briefly, and William felt the sentence pass through him more deeply than any accusation could have. Maya continued, her voice quiet but clear. "Mama said we could not go asking for anything. She said if people forget you, chasing them makes your heart tired. But nobody said I could not keep my promise. So I cleaned the stone. I brought flowers when I could. Sometimes just leaves that look pretty. I told her about school. I told her Mama was trying. I told her I was still reading." William could see it. The child alone at dawn, speaking softly to marble because it was the closest thing left to the woman who had seen her. There was no spectacle in it. No demand. Only loyalty. His own visits, outsourced through florists and maintenance contracts, suddenly felt like empty signatures beside her muddy shoes and simple daisy. "Were you ever afraid at the cemetery?" he asked gently. Maya shook her head. "Not of the cemetery. Quiet places do not scare me. People in a hurry scare me more." William looked away. He had been people in a hurry for most of his life. Tasha reached across the table and brushed a thumb over Maya's sleeve. "I told her not to go so often." "You had work," Maya said. "And Sunday morning bus rides are cheaper before 7. William heard that detail and almost broke then, not loudly, but inwardly. A child had calculated bus fare to keep his wife's memory company. He opened the read last envelope because he knew he could no longer defend himself. Eleanor's final letter was shorter than he expected. "Will, if you are reading this with Tasha or Maya nearby, do not turn them into symbols to make yourself feel forgiven. Listen to them. Ask what they need. Ask what they want. Then remember that dignity means giving help without taking control. If Maya still has the blue handkerchief, it means she kept a promise I had no right to place on a child, but somehow trusted her to carry. Please do not reward her like a hero in a newspaper story. Stand beside her like a man who has finally learned." William lowered the page. No one spoke. The kitchen light hummed softly overhead. Outside, the laundromat sign flickered on, blue and white against the deepening evening. He looked at Maya. "What do you want?" She seemed startled by the question. "For what?" "For yourself. Not what I think you need. Not what Eleanor guessed. What do you want?" Maya looked at her mother, then at the book on the table, then at the mismatched laces on her shoes. "I want Mama not to worry every time the rent paper comes." Tasha inhaled, but Maya kept going. "I want to stay at my school. I want the library lady to stop saying my card has too many late fees. And I want Mrs. Eleanor's grave to have daisies, but not the expensive kind that looks scared." William nodded slowly, each request landing with more force because none of them were grand. "Rent, school, library books, honest flowers. Then that is where we begin," he said. Tasha looked at him carefully. "Begin how?" William folded Eleanor's letter and placed it back in the envelope. "By reopening the Porchlight account tomorrow morning. By contacting every person on this list with an apology, not a press release. By paying what was stopped. By making sure you and Maya are secure without putting your faces on a brochure. And by asking before acting. Tasha's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed firm. We are not charity. No, William said. You are the people my wife trusted to teach me what charity was supposed to mean. Maya reached into her pocket and took out the blue handkerchief. She laid it beside the folder, next to Eleanor's final letter. Does this mean you are going to visit her now? William looked at the pale cloth, then at the child who had carried more grace than any room he owned. Yes, he said, but not alone. Maya tilted her head. Who is going with you? William's voice softened. Someone who knows which flowers she actually liked. The next morning came washed clean by overnight rain. Charleston looked softer beneath the pale blue sky, its brick sidewalks shining, its church steeples bright against the clouds, its old oaks dripping quietly over streets that smelled of salt, coffee, and wet earth. William arrived at East Bay Street just after 7 with no driver, no assistant, and no black overcoat that made him look like a man arriving to inspect something. He wore a plain navy jacket, dark jeans, and the watch Eleanor had given him, the only expensive thing he could not bring himself to remove. In the passenger seat sat a paper-wrapped bundle of daisies from a grocery store, not the florist on Meeting Street that knew his account number by heart. He had stood in the produce section 10 minutes earlier, holding 2 bunches in his hands while an elderly woman beside him compared bananas, and for the first time in years he had felt ordinary in a way that did not embarrass him. Maya was waiting on the front step with the blue handkerchief tucked into the pocket of her yellow sweater. Tasha stood behind her, arms folded, watching William with the kind of caution that had not vanished but had begun to make room for something else. You got the right ones, Maya said, looking at the daisies. William glanced down at the bundle. I almost bought the expensive kind. They looked too nervous, Maya said. I remembered. Tasha's mouth softened. You both be back before lunch. William nodded. Of course. Maya lifted her backpack onto one shoulder. Mama, I put the rent notice in the top drawer so you do not have to look at it today. Tasha closed her eyes for a second, then opened them with a tenderness that made William look away. Thank you, baby. But grown-up worries are not yours to organize. Maya shrugged. They sit on the table where everybody can see them. William heard the sentence and stored it beside all the other simple truths this child kept handing him without knowing their cost. He opened the car door, and this time Maya climbed in with less hesitation, though she still checked her shoes before setting them on the floor. Matt. They drove through the morning light toward Magnolia Rest. For several blocks, neither of them spoke. The radio stayed off. The city passed in small scenes. A school crossing guard raising one gloved hand, a dog shaking rainwater from its ears, a bakery worker sliding trays into a front window. William found himself noticing everything. Did Mrs. Eleanor talk about him? Maya asked suddenly. William looked over. About who? You. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. What did she say? Maya considered this carefully. She said you used to sing badly in the kitchen. A surprised breath left him, almost a laugh. That is unfortunately true. She said you pretended you did not like Christmas music, but you knew all the words. Also true. Maya smiled at the window. She said sometimes people get lost inside the life they built. The smile faded. William drove past a row of white houses with black shutters, their porches still wet from rain. Did she say I was lost? No, Maya said. She said you left lights on behind you, but you forgot to turn around. William could not answer. Magnolia Rest appeared ahead, its iron gates open, its gravel paths shining under the washed morning sun. William parked near the east fence. There was no maintenance cart this time, no Grant Whitaker stepping from behind the magnolias with a polished warning. Just quiet grass, low bird song, and the soft drag of Maya's backpack zipper as she took out the blue handkerchief. They walked together to Eleanor's grave. The expensive lilies from 2 days earlier had been removed. The daisy Maya had placed there remained, wilted but brave beneath the carved name. William stood before the stone and felt the old instinct rise in him. The instinct to become composed, to stand tall, to turn sorrow into posture. Then Maya knelt. She laid the handkerchief across her knee, took a small bottle of water from her backpack, and dampened one corner. You start at the top, she said. Dust falls down. William looked at her. Of course it does. He lowered himself beside her, his knees pressing into the wet grass. The cold came through his jeans immediately. He did not move away. Maya handed him the cloth. Gently. It is stone, but still. He took the handkerchief. His fingers brushed the silver initials, EH, and for a moment, he could see Eleanor standing at their bathroom mirror, folding that same blue square before putting it into her purse. He wiped the top of the headstone slowly. Water gathered in the carved letters and caught the light. Eleanor Marie Harrington, beloved wife, gentle heart. He had read those words before, but never while cleaning them with his own hands. I am sorry, he whispered. Maya did not interrupt. The breeze moved through the oak branches above them. William wiped another line of stone. I am sorry I sent flowers instead of myself. I am sorry I let other people answer the questions I was too afraid to ask. I am sorry you had to leave breadcrumbs because I would not sit still long enough to hear you. His voice cracked, but he kept speaking, not loudly, not for anyone beyond the marble and the child beside him. I found the folder, Ellie. I found Tasha. I found Maya. I am late. I know I am late. But I am listening now. Maya reached into the paper bundle and separated the daisies one by one. She did not rush him. When the stone was clean, she placed 3 flowers in the vase and handed the rest to William. She liked odd numbers, she said. 5 looks like somebody tried. 7 looks like they meant it. William placed 7 daisies carefully in the bronze holder. His hands were steadier now, but his chest felt open in a way he had once believed only pain could make it. Maya stood and brushed grass from her knees. There is one more thing, she said. William looked up. She pulled a folded slip of paper from her backpack. I wrote it down because I did not want to say it wrong. What is it? Something Mrs. Eleanor told me the last time I saw her. William rose slowly. Maya unfolded the paper, though she barely looked at it. Her eyes stayed on him. She said, if Mr. Will ever comes with you, tell him I did not need him to be perfect. I needed him to come home before his heart forgot the way. William closed his eyes. The words entered him softly, but they did not stay soft. They moved through every locked room inside him, every late night, every missed dinner, every anniversary covered in roses, every apology paid for instead of spoken. When he opened his eyes, the cemetery blurred with light. He did not collapse. He did not make grief into a performance. He simply lowered himself onto the stone bench beside the grave, placed both hands over his face, and let the silence take what pride had left behind. Maya stood near him, close enough that he was not alone, far enough that his sorrow remained his own. After a while, he felt a small hand place the blue handkerchief beside him on the bench. Not in his hand, not forced, offered. William picked it up and pressed it once to his eyes. She wanted you to be good again, Maya said. Her voice was gentle, almost careful. Not rich, not important, just good. William looked at the girl through the morning light, at her yellow sweater, her serious eyes, her shoes with mismatched laces, and understood why Eleanor had trusted her. Not because Maya was small, because Maya was true. He folded the handkerchief and held it against his chest. Then I will spend the rest of my life trying, he said. Maya looked at the grave, then back at him. Trying counts if you do not quit. Above them, sunlight broke through the branches and touched the clean stone, the daisies, the wet grass, and the man who had finally come home to the lesson his wife had left in the hands of a child. By Monday morning, the porch light account was open again. William Harrington did not announce it from a stage, did not call a newspaper, and did not allow anyone in the communications department to turn Eleanor's name into a headline. He sat in his office with Rachel Myers, 2 attorneys, and a stack of files from the blue folder spread across his desk, and one by one, he signed the papers that reversed 11 months of silence. Rent assistance was restored without conditions. Clinic bills were paid directly and quietly. The Lowcountry Children's Reading Room received enough funding to reopen 3 afternoons a week. Reverend Samuel Price's pantry got a new refrigerator before noon. Angela Rivera received a call from the clinic, saying her son's treatments had been reinstated, and when she asked why, the nurse only said, "Someone corrected a mistake." William liked that sentence because it was the truth without applause. By 3 o'clock, he was standing inside Palmetto Wash and Fold while washing machines churned behind him and Tasha Brooks stared at a 1-page agreement on the folding table near the front window. It was not a contract designed to own her gratitude. It was not a charity document with photographs and signatures. It was simple: 12 months of housing stability, school support for Maya, transportation assistance, and access to a family financial counselor if Tasha wanted one. At the bottom was a handwritten note from William. No control. No publicity. Ask first. Tasha read it twice. Maya stood beside her with a library book hugged against her chest, watching her mother's face more than the paper. This is too much, Tasha said softly. William shook his head. It is less than what was promised. Promises do not usually come back after people bury them. This one did, he said. Tasha looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes held no fear of being reduced. Only caution, dignity, and a quiet exhaustion beginning to unclench. We will accept the rent help, she said, and Maya's school support. But I want to keep working. Of course. And I do not want people at your office calling me some inspiring case. William nodded. They will not. Maya looked at him. What about the library late fees? For the first time that day, William smiled fully. Those have been handled. Maya narrowed her eyes. Handled how? A donation to the library system's Children's Access Fund. Not just your fees. Everyone's fees under 12 years old in the local branches. Maya stared at him, then looked at her mother. That means other kids can get books again? Tasha's mouth trembled. William nodded. That means other kids can get books again. Maya looked down at her own book and held it a little tighter. Mrs. Eleanor would like that. The following Sunday, the three of them returned to Magnolia Rest together. This time, Tasha came too, wearing her best blue blouse beneath a tan cardigan. She carried the cookie tin, not because the letters needed to be brought, but because she said some memories deserved sunlight. William carried daisies from the grocery store. Maya carried the pale blue handkerchief, freshly washed and folded into a careful square. The cemetery was bright and quiet, the grass trimmed, the sky wide and clear above the old oaks. At Eleanor's grave, William knelt first. He wiped the stone slowly, not because it was dirty, but because he had learned that showing up was not only for broken things. Maya placed 7 daisies in the vase. Tasha set one hand gently on her daughter's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, Mrs. Eleanor." William stood, but he did not rush the silence. He let it breathe. Then he reached into his jacket and took out a small envelope. "I found one more note in the folder," he said. Maya looked up. "Another one?" "Yes." He opened it carefully. Eleanor's handwriting was thinner on this page, but still clear. "If there is ever a day when Maya brings you back to me, do not mistake her kindness for childhood innocence. Children know when adults are pretending. Let her remind you that goodness is not a feeling. It is a practice." William lowered the page. The breeze moved through the daisies. Maya frowned slightly, thinking, "What does practice mean?" Tasha answered before William could. "It means you do it again tomorrow." Maya nodded, satisfied. "Then he has to come next Sunday too." William looked at Eleanor's name, then at the child beside him. "I will. And not send flowers instead. I will bring them myself. The regular kind." "The regular kind," he promised. Weeks passed, and the promise did not disappear into convenience. Every Sunday morning, William came to Magnolia Rest with grocery store daisies, sometimes alone, sometimes with Maya and Tasha, sometimes with a book Maya wanted to read aloud because she said Eleanor should hear the ending. Harrington Tower South changed in quieter ways too. The lobby fountain remained, but beside it appeared a small wooden shelf filled with children's books anyone could take for free. The cleaning staff break room was renovated before the executive lounge. A child care stipend appeared in employee benefits without a press conference. The Porchlight account became a protected family foundation with one rule written at the top of its charter in Eleanor's words: give help without taking control. Grant Whitaker's name faded into legal documents and closed doors, but Eleanor's did not fade. It moved through rent paid on time, warm waiting rooms, after-school reading circles, grocery cards slipped into envelopes with no cameras nearby, and daisies on a grave that no longer looked lonely. One crisp morning near the end of fall, Maya stood at the cemetery bench watching William clean the bronze vase. She was wearing new sneakers, both laces white, though she had tied a yellow bead to one side, because she said matching did not have to mean boring. Tasha waited near the path, speaking with Rachel about a community reading night she had agreed to help organize. Maya looked at William and held out the blue handkerchief. "You should keep it now." William shook his head gently. "Eleanor gave it to your mother. And Mama said promises can move when they are finished." He looked at the cloth, then at the little girl who had carried it farther than anyone had asked. "Are you sure?" Maya nodded. "I do not need it to remember her anymore." You do. William took the handkerchief with both hands. The silver initials caught the sunlight. YH. For a moment, the cemetery was so quiet that even the city beyond the gates seemed to pause. Thank you, Maya, he said. For cleaning the stone? For cleaning more than that. Maya tilted her head, then smiled, small and bright. Mrs. Eleanor started it. William looked at his wife's grave, at the daisies standing fresh in the morning light, at Tasha laughing softly near the path, at Rachel holding a folder full of plans that would help people without naming them as burdens, and he understood at last that redemption was not a grand moment where pain vanished. It was a road made of small returns. A man coming back to the grave. A mother allowed to stand tall. A child keeping her dignity. A promise practiced again tomorrow. He folded the blue handkerchief and placed it in the inside pocket of his jacket, close to his heart. Then he picked up the watering can, filled the vase, and stood beside Maya as the sunlight spread across Eleanor's name. For the first time, the silence did not feel empty. It felt answered.